Good morning. Last week we looked at the miracle of Jesus turning the water into wine at Cana, a small town just right outside of Nazareth where he grew up. At Cana, he probably knew the family. His mom was invited to the wedding. He went over there in a region where people were familiar with him, and he did sort of a private miracle in the everyday happenings of life at a wedding. And we were encouraged last week to think about how God wants to do miracles in the everyday circumstances of our lives. So this week we're going to look at John chapter 4, another miracle that Jesus does shortly after. But it'll be good to get the understanding, the context, what happened in between John 2 and John 4. After that wedding event, Jesus goes south. Cana is sort of in the northern center part of Israel. And about 2 days walk south, maybe 150 kilometers, is Jerusalem. At the Passover feast, it says in John 2, Jesus goes down, goes to celebrate the Passover there. While he's there, he sees a bunch of people buying and selling things in the temple. He gets real bothered by it, and he makes a whip and drives animals out of the temple court. He kicks over some tables, knocks over some money changers' tables. He says, man, this is supposed to be a place of prayer for every nation, and you guys have made it into a den of robbers and thieves. And they say, what are you doing this for? Whose authority do you have to do this? And, so he has some confrontation with the authorities. He's preaching, he's speaking, and he's doing some signs. And it says in John 2, many people saw the signs and the wonders that he was doing in Jerusalem, and they believed in him. Now, after that, he catches a little heat, a little persecution, so he goes back up north through Samaria, and on the way, he speaks to the woman who's at the well, John chapter 4, and he tells her some things about herself. She's like, I think you're the Messiah. She goes into her village. She tells all the guys, you got to come meet this man I just met out by this well. I think he's the Messiah. The whole town comes out to meet him. They talk a little bit. They say, hey, why don't you come stay with us? So he stays 2 days with these Samaritans. And all of a sudden, they tell the woman, hey, we don't just believe in him because of what you said, but after meeting him, after hearing from him, after talking with him, we're convinced he really is from God. He's the Messiah. So after that, it says Jesus goes back up to Galilee and goes to Cana. Now, this is amazing because while he's with these Samaritans, these half-Jews who have not good dealings with the normal Jewish culture, slightly different religious worship system, different religion, different background, different ethnic background, political structures. There's tension between the two cultures. Those people in Samaria received him for what he was without doing any signs or miracles. Then he comes back up to Galilee, his own hometown, where the people didn't even believe in him. They complained against him and said, that guy's just a carpenter. We know his mom. We know his brothers and sisters. Where did he get these teachings from? What did he read them off the internet? How did he get this wisdom? Is he borrowing somebody else's teachings or something? They were offended at him. And at one point, they tried to throw him off a cliff. Now here's Jesus. He comes back into that atmosphere after he had been in Jerusalem, where it says some people saw what he did. And when he gets back in John 4 into Cana, many people warmly received him after seeing the miracles he did. Now here's what it says, John chapter 4. After the 2 days, he left for Galilee. That's the 2 days he spent in Samaria with the woman at the well. Jesus himself pointed out that a prophet has no honor in his own country. But when he arrived back in Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him. They had seen what he had done in Jerusalem at the Passover feast because they had also been there. Once more he visited Cana in Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine, and there was a certain royal official whose son lay sick at Capernaum. Now, Capernaum was about a whole day's journey from Cana to the north coast of the sea, and essentially, sorry about that, I was getting a phone call. Essentially, this man had traveled probably on horseback or on foot a whole day's journey, 7-8 hours, it seems, from Capernaum to Cana because he heard that Jesus had come back into the region. Now it says, this man heard Jesus arrive back in Galilee from Judea, from the south, And he went to him and begged him, come to heal his son who was close to death. When the man comes and says, will you please come help my son? Jesus turns and looks at him with all the people in that region in Galilee. And this is what he tells him. Unless you people see signs and wonders, you never believe. But the royal official said, sir, will you come down before my child dies? Go on back, Jesus says, your son will live. Now the man took Jesus at his word and departed. While he was still on the way, his servants met him with the news that his boy was living. And when he inquired as to the time when his son got better, they said to him, yesterday at the 7th hour, that is about 1 in the afternoon, the fever left him. Then the father realized this was the exact time which Jesus had said to him, your son will live. So he and his whole household believed. This was the second sign that Jesus performed after coming from Judea to Galilee. Now this is an amazing story. A man comes, it says he's an official. That means he's probably working for the king. He's probably working in King Herod's court. He's not like a synagogue ruler or a local ruler or some kind of mid-level government official. He's probably an upper-level official, probably wealthy, probably elite. But he humbles himself because he has some faith in Jesus. And he comes down from Capernaum, a whole day's journey, to come get Jesus. But what we see is that his imagination or his faith is at a certain place. It's stuck at a certain level. Hearing that Jesus has done miracles, signs, and healings, he thinks that Jesus, like other kinds of possible miracle workers in his day, need to be on location to be able to heal. So he says to Jesus, will you come back with me a whole day's journey to come heal my son? Now, the interesting thing that Jesus does is looks at the crowd of people who are around him, because the Greek is in the plural. We know he's not only talking to the official, but he's talking to a group of people. And he says, unless you people see signs, you won't believe. Now, this is probably in contrast to his recent experience coming through Samaria, where he had just talked to these others who were not accepted by the Jews, yet they were wide open-hearted to him. They were warm-hearted, they were kind, they were believing, they were eager, ready to receive his teaching, ready to receive his word, and Jesus didn't do any miracles among them. But yet, when he comes back to his own people in Galilee, not only the Jews, but the place where he was born, he knows that these guys won't believe unless they see signs. They're hard-hearted, they're stubborn. Prove yourself to me, God. If you don't prove that, I won't trust you, I won't believe in you. There's this pride, there's this arrogance, there's this stubbornness about their culture and about the environment that they lived in, where they would not believe, Jesus says, unless they see signs. So Jesus, in his mercy, actually does something interesting when the man comes and asks him to come back with him to Capernaum. He tells him, no, I'm not going. In fact, you go back. Your son's going to be fine. He'll live. The man believes Jesus and leaves. Now, this is interesting. This man didn't know that Jesus could heal from a distance, and that at his very word, things could happen even if he wasn't physically present. And this is what he discovers in this encounter. He goes back, and on the way, his son has already been healed as soon as Jesus said it. And the servants are so excited, they decide to make the trip to come find him, to let him know that his son's okay and he can come back home, not knowing that he had already talked to Jesus. And on the path, they meet each other, and he inquires, what time did he get better? And he realizes it's exactly when Jesus said it. At this, not only he believed, it says, but his whole family believed. Now, this is a lesson that we can learn. Number one is that Jesus is powerful and can do things outside of what we originally imagined and outside of the boxes and the ways that we originally think that he should be doing things. He can do things from a distance. He can do things at his word. He can do things not even physically present. This is powerful because this is how we live now. Jesus is not with us physically, but he's here by his Spirit. And by his Spirit, he still heals people. But secondly, what we see is that Jesus doesn't do what the man wants in the way that he imagines. We have to understand and come to grips with the idea that when we ask God for things in our lives, oftentimes he's not going to come through in the way that we think he should, just because he's done something in that way in the past for other people. We often think that God gets into rhythms like we do, and thought processes like we do, or habits like we do, and does things the same way all the time, which is not the case. When you run up against the wall, when you hit the challenges in your life, as you surely will, be open-minded and open-hearted that God may want to surprise you and do things in a new way. But the final thing I see here, that's the most important thing, is that Jesus not only wants to heal the son, the boy of the Father, but what he wants to do is save the souls of the whole family. Often when God doesn't do things in the way that you think he should, oftentimes when we won't believe because we're looking for certain signals or certain signs, and he doesn't come through in the way at the time that we think he should, it's because what he's ultimately doing is operating in a different way that's contrary to what we want, because his interest is in the salvation of our souls, not just the healing of our bodies. As you ponder these things, I pray God bless you in the name of Jesus.